but not everybody responds to that. So you've got to have some tools in your little toolbox to where you can fix a person who has not responded correctly to the teaching method. The teaching method is a good place to start, but if you're going to be an effective coach, you're going to have 5, 6, 10 backup plans in mind to use when your client doesn't respond to the teaching method, because that happens. So if all we had to do was to establish the teaching method, you don't need a coach. All you need for that is a video.
We wouldn't have any job.
Nobody would have a job.
Yeah.
Right? All you need is a videotape of that.
Right.
Well, what happens when the videotape doesn't apply? Well, this guy doesn't get it right.
Yep.
Right? And that's what is essentially happens when you as the coach abdicate your responsibility to correct the error. You have to learn how to correct the error. Now, we've got education products for that. We've got camps, we got seminars, we got all kinds of things. And in fact, all of you people that are trying to be coaches for this stuff have already been exposed to all this material. You just haven't internalized it, and you haven't incorporated it into your practice. All right? If I've got somebody at 225 that can't keep their back flat, I back them up to 185 and go through the process of troubleshooting the movement pattern, troubleshooting the position off the floor, troubleshooting what happens directly after you start the pull. All those things, we troubleshoot them. And if 185 is still too much weight, we back off to 135. We got 135, right? I'd rather see the client pull 135 correctly than 225 wrong, wouldn't I? Because if he can do 135 correctly, the next workout, he can do 145 correctly, then 155, right? 10 pounds of workout, 5 pounds of workout, accumulates into a correct adaptation. But if you, the coach, don't want to go through that process, you're either lazy or you're afraid to confront the client with a technique problem, and that happens. Well, you're not doing your job. I'm sorry, you're not doing your job. Now, this applies to all the other lifts, too. Right? There's a correct way to do each one of the lifts. And that's what this boils down to. We have analyzed all 5 of the basic barbell movement patterns. And we know what constitutes the correct expression of that movement pattern for every single client that you will run into, irrespective of body composition, of proportion, anthropometry, all these things. Here's that, and that's what's called the model. The model is the thing that applies to everybody doing the normal human movement pattern. That's what the model is. The model, by its very nature, adapts to all human anthropometry. I don't care if you've got a short torso and long legs or the opposite, a long torso and short legs. Our model of the squat and the deadlift applies to you. You, as the coach, have to understand how that applies. That's part of obtaining the certification, starting strength coach. But you don't have to be a starting strength coach to be able to apply the model to a bunch of people. We'd rather you were operating through us, but the book is sold 1 million copies, and it's all in there. This is the biggest selling strength conditioning text in the history of publication, and all this stuff is in there. This week on Starting Strength Radio, we're going to have an uncomfortable conversation with some of our coaches. We're going to talk about specifically the use of the rack pull when the floor pulled, the full deadlift, ought to be coached. And we're going to apply that analysis to all the other lifts too, and to the relationship between coaches and clients, between coaches and athletes, who always must keep technical execution in mind instead of the comfort level of the people they're coaching. All right, it gets pretty ugly. You'll want to join us on the next episode of Starting Strength Radio.